So welcome to the Herland Report, Dr. Ron Paul.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be with you.
We admire you so much. I live in the Middle East, and so many people in the Middle East seem so voiceless today because the media is owned by the large corporations. We hear only perspectives of the ultra-rich, so to speak. And you are a loved man all over the world for doing the great work that you've done, both here at the Liberty Report, which I advise everybody to follow, and you focus on the respect for national sovereignty and liberty and the respect for all nations and peoples. You have over $20 trillion of debt now. How long can you keep printing dollars out of thin air?
Well, that is unknown, but it's not a viable system, so it will come to an end. We're going to push the dollar over the edge eventually, just because we'll keep printing too many. And the end of a system like that bears a lot on the psychology as well, the panic, because it doesn't deserve to be the reserve currency of the world. But we're still a powerhouse, and people are dependent on it. And yet, it used to be used 60% of the time as a world reserve currency. It's down to 40% now, so it's gradually being eroded. But yes, I think there's going to be an alternative. I think what Russia's talking about, India talks about it, China especially talks about it, trading oil in yuan and have it convertible into gold. That will come along, but it will be slow. But the end of a currency can go rapidly. If you just think in recent history, whether it's Venezuela or Zimbabwe, nobody paid much attention to it for about 10 years. But then there was a year that things go off the roof, and that's the way currencies go. The end stages are uncontrollable, and it's some event that you can't predict. And that's the way stock market crashes come too. They come with events that are unpredictable, but I think the trends are predictable because of the way that we print money, because it causes excessive debt, excessive speculation, imbalances, too much debt, and there's a limit to it. Even if the governments won't back off, the market will make us back off. I think that's happening, and I talk a lot about the dollar, and I think the dollar will eventually disintegrate. Not that the dollar will disappear, but it will disintegrate as the reserve currency of the world. But I don't think it's going to happen in 6 months. I think it's going to continue to go down, but there will be some event somewhere along the way that will precipitate a rush out of dollars, and we will have to do some adjustments.
So the erosion has been going on for a long time.
The system is getting poorer, but on the surface it still looks pretty good to a lot of people. People who are in poverty are in bread lines. They get food stamps, and we sort of shun them and hide them. And if you're poor and you can't go to school, we grant these big loans, and kids go to school to get degrees that don't help them, because the system that we're opposing is in control of the educational system from kindergarten on up. It's indoctrination. And that certainly was part of the emphasis in the 20th century with the fascist state. They wanted to control kids. I don't know how all the countries of Europe right now run their schools, but I do know that the Far Easterners are pretty good on education, and they'll study harder, and they come here and they do quite well. But our university system, I think, is a total disaster. It's endorsed by the professors. It influences the students, and they're screaming. The worse the problems get, you have the people who make the most noise saying, what we need is more socialism. We need more government and more spending. The very cause of the problem. It's sort of like foreign policy. No matter how many failures we have on foreign policy, the military keeps coming back. They're working on the budget right now, and they keep saying, well, we need more money. Don't anybody vote to cut any military money. So those are the individuals in charge there. But that just moves the failure of the system along.
When I came here into America, I came from Qatar. And boy, are the airports in all the rest of the world look like Disney films, you know, with golden columns and so wonderful. I travel a lot in the Far East. People are so rich in China. The country is so rich. Yet, once you land in Miami or in Los Angeles, it's like going back to the 1970s. And, you know, you could make a film there from the 1970s just from watching the airports. So the deterioration of America is very noticeable to the rest of us. I think we have to go back to 1987 to see the high point for a regular American family economically. And it's such a paradox to watch such great Western values such as freedom of speech now being turned from its original meaning, which was really to let diversity exist, to becoming a system of repercussion and using free speech as a means to demean and end the diversity and the respect for diversity. I think that's a major problem in America today.
And it's a planned strategy. I mean, to distort language, distort meanings, and I think political correctness is, for the most part, insane, you know, about how they punish people for thinking one way or the other. And the only answer for that is for people to further understand what personal liberty is all about. And liberty is not collective. It's not because anybody belongs to a group. It's not because somebody belongs to a minority group or a sexual group, and therefore they need protection and special help. Every individual gets the right amount of liberty. They get the maximum amount of liberty. The real problem we have in our country right now that's causing this to be worse is the judicial system, you know, endorses all this corruption. And you take our drug laws. I mean, it's a shame that we're at the point where so many people are on drugs and alcohol and all this, but when you see how these laws are enforced, you know, some of the people who are innocent victims of this, they get punishments quite a bit different than the scoundrels who are impoverishing this nation, who are in the military-industrial complex or using our military for their own benefit.
Many in the mainstream media, also in Europe, all we do is translate the articles that come out of CNN or New York Times or Washington Post, and 2 weeks later they're in the local newspapers in the various languages in Europe. And I think for many, they're not aware of to which degree the mainstream media is a pure propaganda outlet now for the ultra-rich.
That's right, and of course it's a cliche now that who's putting out the fake news? You know, there's fake news and it's done deliberately and it's political. But the other thing is false understanding of economic policy, because we still have people influenced by the progressives, the Keynesians, the Krugman people, and our Federal Reserve officials, and everybody. And most members of Congress were trained in universities that taught economic interventionism. They weren't exposed to the school of thought that I have been exposed to, and that's the Austrian School of Economics, which teaches free markets and property rights and sound money and no inflation, this sort of thing. So, and that is why it's a prevailing attitude in Washington. But also, the best part of that is the number of people who know about the defects in the Federal Reserve System and in the monetary system, and why there is an alternative to Keynesianism. Those numbers are growing. I first went into Congress in 1976. Nobody had the vaguest idea what I was talking about. But today, we literally have thousands, if not millions, of people who put the blame where it belongs on that Federal Reserve System, serving the interests of the very wealthy and the bankers and the military, and anybody who plays ball with the politicians get the money. And but I think that is changing, but it's still a struggle.
And that's the issue that renowned linguist Noam Chomsky has stated, of course, now for a number of years, that the U.S. is no longer a democracy, that it's an oligarchy and ruled by the very few on behalf of the many. And it's a paradox, but it seems like the idea of democracy really has been lost to us in the West, that the interests of the people should be guarded and that the politician's role is to serve the people, not the other way around.
Yes, and that's what liberty is all about. It does serve the interests of the people. The best form of democracy that I like is that when you have a free market, every penny Now today it's every dollar we spend, we're voting for the company. If they make profits, they stay in business. If we don't buy their stuff or the prices are too high, we punish them. They go out of business. But you're not allowed to go out of business. We bail them out and we subsidize and all this sort of thing. That type of democracy I like. But political democracy is and can be a problem because all you have to do is collect the people together at 51%. We're going to vote. We're saying this. We have 51% of the people now who want more subsidies. Well, see, that doesn't work. What you need is people wanting their liberties, and it should be limited, but not the dictatorship of the majority can be pretty ruthless too. You know, if pure democracy can be dictatorial because you can bring people together and say, well, the people support this. 55% just said that we need to double the military budget. Well, why is that? Well, we look at CNN and they tell us we have to vote for more money. So if you have just the numbers, then those numbers can go against you as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ron Paul, for accommodating us here in the great state of Texas and taking your time to meet with the Herland Report from Scandinavia. And we would like to endorse you to all our viewers, and we know so many watch you from all over the world. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Great being with you.